Alright, Shalom. I'm going to start off by giving all praises, honors, and glories unto Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shah, Bahashim, Kodash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders, also the bishops of Great Millstone that told me this truth that rule well. Shalom to the elect scattered through the four corners of the earth. My name is Kodash Paya. There's a few headlines, on what's been going on, right? But before, I read any of those, I want to bring out in the book of Psalms, chapter 64 and verse, I'm going to start at one. It says, says to the chief musician, a psalm of David, hear my voice, O God, in my prayer. Preserve my life from fear of the enemy. Right? Scriptures tell you never trust our enemy. So if you don't know who the enemy is, how are you going to prepare? How do you know his tactics? Right? But it says in the book, Slakia, verse 2, it says, hide me from the secret counsel of the wicked, from the insurrection of the workers of iniquity. So, he's telling the Lord, pleading with the Lord to hide him from the secret counsel of the wicked, right? Scriptures in the book of Job stated that the earth is given into the hands of the wicked. So we've seen these so-called ruling class families, from the house of Esau, the Edomites, right? According to the, scriptures, their biblical names, which are the so-called Caucasians, right? These banking families, that's behind the curtains of the government, right? The Amalekites, those that so-called Jews over there in Israel but are not, but are the synagogue of Satan. But it says, and they've been having these secret councils to usher in these different agendas to bring in these lockdowns. So you have their gradual steps in changing the laws and things of that nature. Resigning laws, taking away rights and putting in executive orders. Things of that nature. These secret councils of the wicked. So, hey, you want the Lord to protect you from, all hell breaking loose. And I'm about to get an article real quick going into their secret councils. So you want the Lord to preserve you, from when Esau basically comes in like a flood. Because, if they have but a short time. So that's why they're trying to bring in these 15-minute cities. Basically order out of chaos. So right now it's chaotic. This is in the Daily Mail. It says food, rationing, panic buying, planes grounded, and economic hammer blow far worse than the COVID. Economists explain nightmare scenario that could be just weeks away due to Iran war. That's one headline. There's another headline that says in the CNBC, work from home, drive slower, and don't use gas cookers. IEA advise on weathering the global energy crisis. So now, they could pass these laws, these climate-like laws to people to ration, tell people to ration how much oil to make in your own house, how long you could keep lights on, or the grid was shut down to where, they have these different areas to send people, like a 15-minute city, to where you will own nothing and be happy. I believe the spokesman for the World Health Organization spoke about it. Was it? No, I think it was the economic forum. One of those two. But it's still, part of their agenda as far as ushering in, a new order of things, right? So you have also something called a climate lockdowns, to where you're limited into using certain things in quote unquote to help the climate. So when they're the ones that's actually destroying it, you know? For example, shit, I was out earlier and it was me and my lady and we both saw all these chemtrails. Even people in the world know, like they know, you know what I mean, on how with the food, with the air, with the water, right? How it's you know destroying you since as a kid, as a child, right? But anyway, it says, this is another article. It says, a headline rather, Trump deploying ICE to airports on Monday to ease crowded TSA lines as NYC travelers face security line hell. And all these headlines was just recently published, within either today or 2 days ago. So here it is. This article is referring to tomorrow, for March 23rd, 2026, ICE agents in the airports to travel. Coincidental is that, right? When they were deployed in the streets by Trump to prevent migrants, which are Israelites, which are Jakes, to do certain things, sending them back over the borders. And now they're deployed in airports where people travel domestically and internationally. So now it's this. Do you see how more of a dictatorship this is becoming? So now if you said something 3 years ago on your social media platform, you won't be able to travel. Or ICE agents could. Hey man, there's so many stories with Jake going international and trying to come back and they can't because their passports were either terminated one way or another, right? And then that's another thing too, how they can keep you trapped in America, you know? Because you're going to have a lot of people flee back to their own land. And that's a prophecy right there. Scriptures speak about that. Matter of fact, let's get that because, we also know how the scriptures speak about a man shall desire to go to a city and shall not be able to. So that's basically more restrictions, on traveling. On traveling from city to city, from country to country, state to state. But this is Salaki, I lost my train of thought. Hold on. Okay, hold on. Flee. Alright, this is the book of Isaiah, chapter 13, verse 14. It says, And it shall be as the chased roe, and as a sheep that no man taketh up. They shall every man turn to his own people, and flee every one into his own land. So, you see now how people came to America to flourish, to, start businesses, to, things of that nature. Now, people are seeing how the tables are turning and people are fleeing back to their own homeland, back to their country, back to where they resided at, you know? And even with Babylon the Great, America losing or her allies, you know, which, like Europe, which is part of NATO, is also prophetic when it states they shall hate the whore, which is the other kings of the earth, hating Babylon the Great, which is the whore, you know. But anyway, I want to get where it states, all right, Salak, KJV. All right, this is the book of Second Esdras, chapter. Salakia, this is the book of Second Esdras, chapter 15, verse 16. It says, "For there shall be sedition among men, and invading one another. They shall not regard their kings nor princes." And that's what's going to happen. Well, we're seeing it, gradually happen. Hey, you saw it happen when the MAGA boys ran down in the one of the political houses, one of the political buildings. I forget, but people is not, when they don't have nothing to lose, they lose it. You know, when people lose everything around that they, trust in, Jake is gonna snap. They're not gonna regard their kings nor princes. They're not gonna care about getting locked up or anything like that, from stealing when it's famine going on, when the grid shuts down. Because now they say Iran is threatening to attack the grid. As it tells you over here, Iran threatens to completely close Strait of Hormuz and hit power plants after Trump ultimatum. So that's another thing. They start hitting power plants. That's going to affect a lot. And then they're talking about potential T attacks. So that's something to consider and be mindful and watch for. Because this is also a holy war. You know? Understand that. And completely closing the Straits of Hormuz, you're about to see a skyrocket of hyperinflation hit. This is, and rationing. Because I'm telling you, for things to, what Esau's doing is he's doing something called out with the old, in with the new. So that's a new way of doing things. New currency, new laws, a new world order as they trying to ultimately, set. So it says, we're going to read this again. "For there shall be sedition among men, and invading one another. They shall not regard their kings nor princes, and the course of their actions shall stand in their power." It says, "And a man shall desire to go into a city and shall not be able." So you're not going to have, basically, you're not going to have that liberty anymore to travel wherever your heart desires. That it's going to be more lockdowns and more restrictions. Problem, reaction, solution. So I would say watch and pray, and putting out your trust in this place, because obviously we're seeing and hearing of wars and rumors of wars, plagues, famine, divisions among the people, right? Esau, hey man. Matter of fact, it speaks about that where it states basically the Isaiah, I know Isaiah the 10th chapter, the first verse tells you what? "Woe unto them that decree unrighteous decrees, and that write grievousness which they have prescribed." So, matter of fact, you can get that in the blue letter. So you can read it in so you can see it also in the NLT. Slakia, Isaiah 10 and 1, right? So it says, verse 1, it says, "What sorrow awaits the unjust judges and those who issue unfair laws." Right? Woe unto those people. These demonic ass politicians, you know, Edomites, Esau, right? Which is all prophetic to bring more hell into you so-called, to you Jakes, you so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native American Indians, which are the biblical Israelites. That's why the scriptures speak about Jacob's troubles, you know? I mean, we always had trouble as a nation. Our people always been in troubled, traumatic times and situations in slavery because we went off. So now we got to suffer as a nation. But this trouble now is going to be in a magnitude of such as we never witnessed ever on earth. Even the scriptures speak about that in the book of Daniel, the 12th chapter. It says, they deprived the poor of justice and denied the rights of the needy among my people. They prey on widows and take advantage of orphans. What will you do when I punish you? When I send disaster upon you from a distant land? To whom will you turn for help? Where will your treasure be safe? You will stumble along as prisoners or lie among the dead. But even then, the Lord's anger, Yahweh's anger, will not be satisfied. Damn. So, this is why we read about the second death. Because now the Lord is going to show his anger, not with water, but with fire and brimstone. Right? On top of his chariots, shooting them laser beams. That's adding, you know, insult to injury, salt to the, like, that's overcooked. You niggas is about to be overcooked. That's the second death, the lake of fire. And that's primarily talking about the land of Babylon, America, Babylon the Great. You know, because this place is going to be utterly destroyed. You know, completely. The rest of the lands throughout the world are not. They're still going to be inhabited. You know? And that's going to show the anger of the Lord towards Esau, Edom. And it tells you that in the book of Obadiah, which is only one chapter. You know? Anyway, this is why we ought to watch and pray. Be not ignorant of, you know, of Satan's devices. Because this is what he's doing to ration, to force people to, you know, people are panic buying, but to force them to ration. Shelves are going to be emptied, you know? And the lack of something increases the value of it. So what you think that's going to cause? You know? You do the math. But that's why time and time again, we say what? Isaiah 55:6, seek ye the Lord while he may be found. Call upon him while he is near. You know? Because all these things that's coming is for judgment. You know? And you people still not going to turn from your wickedness. This is why, when sudden destruction comes, then shall they know that a prophet was among them. So, with that, I hope this was edifying. Stay to the point. Till next time, I'm going to say shalom.